Hey everybody, welcome back to the program. It's good to I'm Wayne Hoffman, the president of Idaho Freedom Action, and have with us one of the very best and brightest in the state capitol, Representative Heather Scott from now District 2 in northern Idaho, North Idaho. And why did I say northern Idaho? I never say that. I just said
Not
it.
sure.
It's weird. Okay. Anyway, forgive me. Very good to have you, Heather. Welcome to the program, and you're here because you're one of the Freedom Index All Stars. Somebody who's voted extraordinarily well this last legislative session. As usual, this is not a new phenomenon since you got in the legislature. You've always been a really good voice there for conservative principles. So, what stood out from this last legislative session that you were excited about?
I was super excited that we had a lot of new voices, and I think the biggest excitement was in the House. We were allowed to actually run bills and testify on bills. We weren't so micromanaged as we have been in the past. So it was great to be able for the first time in 9 years be able to just do my job and actually work on legislation and not feel like I was being bullied or intimidated every day or micromanaged.
That's really good. Is the House any more conservative than it was last session, or about the same? And maybe you could also compare it to where it was when you first got in.
So I guess when I first started, there were just two of us, Ron Nate and myself, and I felt like we were the only ones standing up on that House floor and pushing issues. That grew, as you see, over the years. I would say overall, we're getting more conservative votes, but the body in general is way more liberal. And it's definitely, you're starting to feel more of the partisan. I call it the blue Republicans or rhinos, and Democrats are literally teaming a lot of the time now. And so many of these votes are at the razor edge. We have gone more liberal, but it's the first year for many of these big rhinos, but they are a force to be reckoned with for sure.
What's a good example of that?
The launch program was a perfect example of that. When the majority of the votes, the bad votes that went through, Democrats teaming with rhinos. Another, I guess, the perfect example would be every single budget bill. It was hard to kill any budget bills, and a lot of those bills, we had a lot of people voting against the bills. They're bad. They're spending like crazy in this state, as you know, Wayne, and we never had the votes to kill many of them. So budget bills are a good example. The launch bill. I mean, the the some of the liberal policies that are coming through, that make it through. The fact that we couldn't get the override on the veto, with the library bill is another great example of how the rhinos team with the Democrats, to get their way.
You did get an override though on House Bill 292, which is the property tax bill. How did that come about?
So I think that the reason that came about is, if you remember, the very first veto we had this year, we did not override the veto, and a lot of Republicans changed their votes and voted as the governor wanted them to.
It
And
was a
so,
near unanimous vote on the on allowing parents, simply allowing parents to teach driver's ed to their
yes,
kids. And
right.
it passed almost unanimously. The governor vetoed it. It came back, and enough legislators, Republicans and Democrats, sided with the governor. They switched their votes.
That right there is a critical vote. If you look at that vote count and look at those legislators, those are the problem legislators right there. After that, we did not override that veto. We had a serious sit down in our caucus to discuss those kind of issues, because, as you know, Wayne, when you're doing a veto override, it's more about standing with your body over the executive branch. I've seen people that said, you know, this is the will of the body. We're going to stick with the body, and that is the talk we needed to have with those new legislators. And so I think that second vote, they were terrified after the chat on the first vote and what they've done. I think they had to make that right. Now, by the time we had the third override, they had coordinated enough with the Democrats to get just enough votes. So the many of them could have cover for their districts to say, oh no, yeah, I stuck with my vote, just enough votes that we would not override that veto.
That's incredible. And so you actually see then what you're telling us is you're seeing a coordinated effort by leftist Republicans and Democrats, like they're having conversations and they're mapping this out.
So not only that, yes, anyone can sit in that gallery and watch from above and watch the conversations and the hobnobbing and the connections with the Democrats and the rhinos. But one better, I have evidence from a meeting up here, a Democratic meeting, a strategy meeting, and the bills they were carrying and that they wanted to pursue. And that next week, we had a big rhino from central Idaho carry that Democrat bill. There is major coordination going on with the rhinos and the Democrats in this state.
Which bill was that?
That was the NIC bills, the bills that come after North Idaho College.
Those did not. Yeah, those didn't advance, but they were certainly designed to take a shot at the conservatives who are now in charge of North Idaho College.
You bet. And bigger than that, Wayne, bigger than that, we need to look at what they're trying to do across the state. Anytime that they can get rid of representation, they just did it in the hospital up here. They took a taxing district hospital and they turned it to a nonprofit. So those elected people are gone now. They're all going to be appointed, and there's no way to change the direction. If that hospital decides they're going to do something that the community does not agree with, there's no recourse when there's no elected board.
Yeah, that whole process started a few years ago when there was legislation passed that said we would actually put appointed people with certain specialties, accounting and medical specialty and so forth on those boards. And then they quickly flipped over to well, we're going to have a board that's no longer controlled by the people and an entity that taxpayers paid for, but it's no longer theirs, which is quite shocking.
Yeah,
and that's
it's very
that's
shocking.
a huge health system too.
Yeah.
That's no small thing. It's no small potatoes.
Well, it just shows you they're getting enough money in other ways from the feds or whoever that they don't need those local taxing dollars anymore. They're going to run these socialized healthcare hospitals however they want.
Now it's interesting because the leftists thought they were going to be able to get rid of you in 2022 with the new legislative map. When you look at the map, if you look at it really, really closely, you were in District 1 and they pushed you into District 2. So you had entirely new people voting for you, and it didn't affect you at all. I mean, do you feel that I mean, that was my impression, was that they were trying to come up with some kind of a scheme that would cause you to lose your base of support and that you would be gone. And it didn't even come close. You didn't even have a primary opponent, if I remember correctly.
That is true. Let's face it, North Idaho is very conservative, and we had built a base up here that was very politically active, and I think that scares Boise. They don't want the citizens in the outlying districts to know what's happening down there at the Capitol. So I do think what they did backfired on them, because we're just growing. North Idaho is growing, and I think if you look at it, there's absolutely zero Democrats. There's a few rhinos, I think 2 left, if I'm not mistaken, all the way to Moscow. So
one is Mark Sauter, who's in the District 1.
Yep.
Who was just censured by the County Central Committee, GOP Central Committee, and I guess
Lori McCann.
Lori McCann, yeah.
Yep.
Who's
and that's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you've come a long way. I mean, considering where you were, 10, 15 years ago, not even close. What's the biggest thing that happened, the biggest victory for conservatives that perhaps they're not even aware of from this last legislative session? I mean, we all know about, House Bill 71 with the transgender stuff, which it looks like we're gonna have to come back and do some work on that again, because now you've got St. Luke's medical system that's saying they're gonna refer people to other clinics in other states. And I suspect the Medicaid system is going to pay to ship kids to other states to have those procedures done. But it's still a victory. The bill
Right.
passed and was signed by the governor, which was more than we expected would happen, I guess. But what else is there that passed that you were surprised by? That you think that this is a victory people don't know about?
Okay, so this is my personal victory, but I think it's a huge victory that not many people know about it. And I've got it here. So if you can see how thick that pile is. Okay, this is a list of agreements that the government has entered into across the state, that most of these are not public agreements. This is just a list. So there's 5,600. And I've realized some of the agencies did not comply with the records request. So there's many agencies in there that I don't even have their agreements in this pile. And so what this bill did, it was House Bill 97. And what it required agencies and government officials to do is when they enter an agreement, to fill out, to turn that into the state controller site, and the state controller will keep a record. As you know, we have Transparent Idaho, which keeps track of every every dollar that they spend in this state. Now we're going to have a list of contracts. Why that is so important is because how I originally got started on this bill is I had a parent say, hey, where is my child's data being shared with from high school? And I could not get an answer from government. And when you get this list, you will be shocked how much data sharing is going on across this state with other states, interstate sharing. And so all those will now be public online, and you will actually be able to read those contracts. That's huge. And that's something people cannot depend on their legislators to deal with. I mean, how could one legislator read every one of these contracts and actually still do their job? It is a job for the citizens to dig into that once that's out there. This is how Common Core came into our state, as you know. A tiny little signature on an agreement, an MOU, an MOA, and the course of our state changes forever. So that to me was my biggest win, and I think it's a big win that not a lot of people really know about.
I love that one, and it's very important too, because there are organizations that you haven't even heard of that we're in some kind of contract or compact or MOU with. And it's more than just data sharing, it's also agreements to enact certain policies. And that goes to another bill that you had that didn't pass, but it sure got farther than anyone expected, which was the bill that said you couldn't have these memberships with all these different organizations. I mean, some of these organizations that we're members of, they're actually lobbying fronts. So we pay dues to them, and then they go out and lobby for leftist policy goals. And getting a handle on that is super important. So you're cracking some pretty tough nuts for sure.
Well, Wayne, I'll go one further. Those two bills are somewhat connected. So remember, the agreement that the governor made for Common Core was through the was through the Western Governors Association, or the National Governors Association. Now that group that they pay the membership and fees and dues to from your tax dollars, that group is in a contract, in agreement with the World Economics Forum's fourth industrial revolution. They're the ones that run Reimagining the West, Changing the Landscape, agreeing to initiatives and goals. And so not only are we in these agreements, we're, as taxpayers, are paying for things we might not agree with. And so that's why both of those bills were pretty connected, but critical. I mean, I'm happy with the one that passed, but we'll come back for the other one next year for sure.
Do we have any agreements with the World Economic Forum or the Council on Foreign Relations that you could see?
Well, I'll tell you something I just found. I was cleaning out my old supplies, like all my old paperwork from the very first year I got in, 2015. And if you remember that bill, the rights of the child, that we got called back in for a special session, I found a lot. You know how you get the letters from the lobbyists that want you to pass a bill? The World Economics Forum signed on with several other Idaho companies to say that they wanted us to vote yes on that bill. So yeah, that's a big deal. That's a big deal.
That is a big deal, and people don't fully understand how involved and invested those organizations are in shaping the future direction of this country. They've been working on it for decades, and you can trace their involvement back to the origins of the Federal Reserve and our involvement in World War I, World War II, the various other wars that we've been involved in, the debasement of the currency. I mean, it goes on and on, and that's not conspiracy theory stuff, guys. This is real stuff. This is what they've been doing in our state for years. And what people don't understand is that the lobbyists who benefit from that scheme have had the run of the show for 60 plus years, 70 years. And what they're seeing now, they're terrified by this because they see legislators asking questions and refusing to just go along and get along. So that's what this is all about. This isn't some, oh, Democrats versus Republicans, and how much we worship our spirit animal political party, monikers, the elephants and donkeys. This is way deeper than that, and you see it play out on the state stage all the time. And that's and in every election cycle, that's where the money flows, is who will do their bidding, who will get their policies passed.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said absolutely.
What's the big idea that you think is going to be the central theme for the, I know I hate to even ask, it's only April, but for the 2024 legislative session, to follow up on the great work that was done this year?
I don't know. I just don't know. I think everyone's going to have campaign on their mind. I'm hoping things, usually on a campaign year, you can get some conservative bills passed because everyone's got to pretend like they're conservatives now after they've just spent the last year destroying our state. So I'm hoping we can get some more conservative pushes, but I don't know. I don't think school choice is going away. I don't think some of these social issues are going away. I still think they're going to be around. Yeah, we'll see. I don't know.
Do you think that the general public understands now? And certainly there may be differences between the North Idaho folks and the folks in Southern Idaho, but do people understand that? Because I used to see this all, and I still see this to some degree. Hey, candidate A, B, and C, are you a conservative? And they'll answer with things like, well, yes, I'm pro-life, I want lower taxes, and I believe in the Second Amendment. And that's pretty much it. And then if you're still not sure, then they'll throw in, oh, and I hate Joe Biden. Do people now understand that there's more to being a conservative than just those very important issues, of course, but the folks that are, you can vote pro-life all day long, and it doesn't matter if you're going to grow government out the wazoo and so on. Do people get that?
I don't know, Wayne. I mean, I think they're waking up. But then I look at Scott Bedke and Brad Little, and they just say how conservative they are, and the folks fall for it every single time. I just don't understand it. So I will say that the conversation has changed. I know, as you know, I'm the co-chair of the Freedom Caucus, and the Freedom Caucus Network, we coordinate statewide with the other Freedom Caucuses and with Washington And the message across the nation right now is the rhinos, is exposing these rhinos. Idaho always seems like people are busy. They're enjoying the short summer they have. They're cutting firewood. They're not paying attention as much. Sometimes we're behind the eight ball, but I'll tell you, with the conversation nationally, I think it's something we all need to tap into and expose these people that have been destroying our state. You just look at what's happening in the Magic Valley with those windmills, and well, they all act like they're against it. They're working behind the scenes to get those windmills, and it's very unfortunate that they're so duplicitous, and nobody sees this. So I don't know. I'm hoping that national message, I'm hoping the Freedom Caucus, we can bring that to the attention of more people. And I'm hoping we have more candidates step up this year to challenge, because if you don't have people challenging these incumbents and exposing what they are doing, and those challengers need to come out now. They need to be looking at what they did and exposing it now, because it's going to take a while to dig through some of the bad stuff these guys have done.
Does it seem to you as that the issues have become more weighty than they were when you first got in?
They become more moral. I mean, like morality issues. Weighty as in, I think we all know where we're headed, and every year we're one step closer, and that is weighty. I mean, how long do you fight, and when do you just stop and hunker down and say, you know what, I don't know that I can fight anymore. We've gone too far. There is a line there when people are going to stop fighting, because unless more people wake up, people are going to start hunkering down. And I know we've been doing it up north for a long time in North Idaho, but I have no idea what that is. A
It looks
gnat
like
crawling across my screen. I didn't even see
that was
it.
kind of scary. I thought something was
That
going
was
to eat
creepy. But I can't say. I mean, I don't have all the answers, but things are getting weighty, or because these little decisions are huge. I mean, this launch program is like when we entered Obamacare, and it was going to change the course of Idaho. It's going to change, major change. Yeah.
who who's worse, Ammon Bundy for sticking up for a kid that was taken away from his family, or Brad Little, who stole $8,000 from every taxpayer in Idaho because he wants to pay for his political cronies?
Or Megan Blanksma carrying the weight for him through the house, or Scott Bedke puppet mastering it all. I don't know
Yeah.
who's worse.
Yeah, that's what I think. I mean, it's like, okay, I mean, you get, I think Ammon is very courageous and did something that a lot of people don't have the nerve, the spine of steel to do, and he's never stolen money from anybody. Brad Little used the force of law to steal from people. You know, if you don't, if you think that your money is somehow going to an education system that's teaching our kids anything about reading, writing, math, and history, you're absolutely wrong. What it's doing instead is it's taking money from us and giving it to businesses that happen to be in the political circle of the folks that are in power.
It's crony capitalism.
Isn't that worse?
It's crony capitalism at its worst. And I will, just to pivot from this, there is a huge problem with CPS in this state. I have a case up north that is just would break your heart. And I literally have, well, I could just say there's corrupt judges out there. And I have lawyers that in their briefings are saying that the state is participating in human trafficking. That's how bad it is. And nobody is addressing it. And when someone stands up, what do they get? They get the political pressure of the executive branch and the cronies and the hospitals pushing back, suing. They want to silence anyone that speaks up in this state. And it's unfortunate, because this is one of the most corrupt states in the union. And I know that because I had a good friend that moved here from Chicago, Illinois. And they said, as corrupt as Chicago, and Illinois is. Idaho is way worse, and they left our state a few years ago because of it.
Yeah,
It's really a
which is shocking. I mean, but at least when you're there, when you're in Illinois, when you're in Chicago, you know what you're getting politically. Here, the difference is that it's a behind the scenes, under the table kind of corruption,
yes.
where the people who know the right people are advantaged against the folks that aren't, and the deals are being struck all the time with politically connected, and the folks that are just average, ordinary people just trying to make a living and feed their families and run their businesses. They're the ones on the receiving end. I hear from all the time from people who are just shocked by the way they're treated by various agencies, the tax commission, the Department of Health and Welfare, the the Department of Environmental Quality. I hear these stories all the time. And then you hear also from even smaller taxing districts, school districts, recreation districts, highway districts that are playing all kinds of games with folks. And they thought they would never see that in a state like Idaho, yet here we are.
Here
It's
we
terrible.
are.
Well, closing thoughts on what it is. I mean, it's got to be hard for you because I always say to folks, they don't throw parades for folks who vote against, big government spending or don't carry the bills for IAC. You don't get the support from the special interest groups in Boise. Is it hard, or is it something that you find actually drives you, or that you get more support because you get to be the kind of the odd man out, if you will, when it comes to the political system in the state?
Yeah, it's hard. Definitely, it's hard. It's not for the faint of heart. You have to have thick skin. I mean, I get attacked daily, daily. I get death threats. I get threats. I mean, it is a tough deal, and I think a lot of people don't know that. I think the way I get around that is I know the only answer, and that is to empower the people, because I truly believe that all power is in the people, and when you empower them to do their job, and they actually do their job, it's game over for big government. And so that's why I so push my 101 things you can do, to get involved, to make a difference. So ways to engage. um, I try to empower people because that is the fix, and it does take the weight off me when you have other people out there. Not everyone can be a state rep, not everyone can be a library commissioner, but what you can do is do your part, and it makes their job easier. It makes it easier for the good ones so they don't get burnt out.
My old friend and mentor, Rouse Mead, when we started the Freedom Foundation 15 years ago, Idaho Freedom Foundation, he says, "What does the freedom mean?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Freedom from what?" Well, the freedom from big government. Why is that important? Well, it's important because when government grows bigger and takes away your freedom, something else shrinks. Your individuality, your family, your ability to make decisions for yourselves. The local churches who might help people in need, the community organizations that can do a lot better than any government organization can in kind of solving problems, and on and on and on. And people don't even know, they don't even realize how much their own neighborhoods and their own towns and cities and counties and states have changed in the last several decades because we have allowed government to infest so many aspects of their day-to-day life.
Yes,
And they don't know how powerful they are, how powerful they could be if they were just left to their own devices to figure things out.
right.
Pretty amazing. You're doing great stuff, and
Thank you.
I'm very proud of you. And I know it's hard, but you have a lot of friends throughout the state. Everyone always talks to me about, "Hey, do you know Heather Scott? She's pretty amazing." And I say, "Yes, she is. She's doing great work, and it's a thankless job. And we're grateful for you. Thanks for all
Thank
the
you.
great votes and hard work."
Well, and I really appreciate the Freedom Foundation. I that's what got me started. part of my journey is someone put that map in front of me, and I realized North Idaho was the one of the top liberal areas in the state. And I said, that's not right. None of my friends are liberal. None of my, none of the people in these areas are liberal. And as I dug deeper into what that map meant, and how my legislators were rated, it totally started opening so many doors for me. So I appreciate what you guys do. And I know you guys get attacked all the time, but it's just what you do for freedom. You think of our founding fathers, and I had many, my dad, my grandpa, my uncle, everyone was in the war. I don't want them to do that in vain, and for my generation to just let this country go. It'd be easy to do, but it's not what we should be doing out of respect for those World War II veterans and those Vietnam guys. And is not what we should do. We have to fight. We cannot not fight.
Hey, if they can hunker down in trenches and trudge through a difficult landscape and snow and rain and mud and muck, if they can fight and give their lives in some cases, the least we can do is travel the state, spread the message, go to the legislature a few months out of the year, fight the establishment people, do whatever needs to be done for our kids, grandkids, for other people's kids and grandkids, for future generations who may never even know our names. We're going to do what's right, what it does to save this country. It starts right here in Idaho, and it starts with people like you. So thanks so much.
Thank
And
you.
we'll be back again pretty soon with some more Freedom Index spotlights. So we'll see you again next time.
All
Thank
right.
you.